welcome to the Coffee at 11 show on this beautiful, beautiful Friday morning in lockdown heaven. And I want to introduce you to my special guest this morning, John Webb O'Rourke. John, please say hi and cheers us with your coffee mug.
Good morning, everybody. Delighted to contribute and to make myself available to this and to speak with my very good friend, Colm O'Brien, and you all.
And John, indeed, the pleasure is all ours. Let me just tell you, before we bring the man himself in, let me just tell you what John has shared with me about what's going on with him. So he says that he's involved in two businesses, at least two businesses at this moment in time, C-19 ESI, which he'll explain to us in a little while, and Zest Healthcare. John says about C-19 ESI, our goal is simple. We help to save lives and protect the amazing emergency services at home and abroad. Using Ireland as a key global hub, we provide a trusted and certified supply chain for distribution of PPE and test kits to Europe, the United Kingdom, the United States, Scandinavia and Africa. Well done, Bula Bus, one and all there. And then he goes on to say that he's got many years' experience in both property development and property management. He was also involved in law in all fields for over 15 years. Went on to follow another passion. He spent 10 years as finance director for the family's builder providers business and is currently director of United Hardware in Dublin, which is the buying representative for over 150 stores throughout Ireland. Over the past 10 years, John then went on and founded and headed up Zest Healthcare, which is a promoter and developer of primary healthcare centres in Ireland. In addition to all of the above, if he's not busy enough, John also holds a diploma in business development from the IMI in Dublin. And something I certainly didn't know about John Webb O'Rourke, and most of you won't know about John Webb O'Rourke, is that he's passionate about racing pigeons and races them around the world, and is currently trading. He's building a stud for racing pigeons. Never knew such a thing existed. And he's building
the cool more of the racing pigeon industry in Ireland. Yeah.
I love it. I have no doubt it will be known who's behind it. So John Webb O'Rourke, you are more than welcome into the Coffee at 11 cafe this morning. In your own words, bring us right back to those early days and bring us up to the time when you got involved with Zest, please.
Yeah, actually, I suppose illness in a way has had a lot to do with the way matters have unfolded. I'm married into the Cal family with my wife Magella for the last nearly 29 years, and in that time, while I was practicing law, I was always advising the family in the family business as their lawyer. And then within days of 9/11, my brother-in-law, who was the youngest of the family and likely to fall into the business, was assaulted in Paris and got a blow to the head around the time of 9/11. And he basically had a brain injury for the next 10 years. It was a minor one, but I'd have to say it took 10 years out of his life, upset everything. And in that time then, while I was brought into the business about 12 months later in 2000 and, after about 7 years in the business in 2009, there was an ad in the paper by the HC looking to secure a primary care centre for a number of towns, of which Kilmallock was one of them. Then came the banking crisis. Probably it was 2008. Then came the banking crisis, and overnight the business suffered in excess of €1 million of bad debt. It was shut down. I mean, I know, forgive me, at this moment, it's incredibly bad in the whole lot. But if there's one thing light at the end of the tunnel from an economic point of view, is that the country can borrow money. Back then, the country could not borrow money. Nobody could get money. So it was like a domino effect, and it isn't resolved either. Fergal Quinn tried to resolve it, but it was actually the big contractors closing down, and there was the subcontractors behind them, like a domino effect, which is what our business. So long story short, anyway, we had 1 acre of a site which was basically holding stock, and we needed to sweat the asset. We needed to turn it into value, because either that or the business for 40 years was going to be closed. So long story short, we worked with Bank of Ireland for the next 5 years, did a deal with them. AIB refinanced the business. I took it upon myself to turn the site into getting planning permission for a primary care centre. And 10 years later, since I started out on that, and 2 Board Canola appeals, successful appeals later, trying to get finance. We got finance. We built the building actually in 11 months. And that brought me to a situation, I suppose, And I've spoken to you about this, Colm, in depth, I think, about, your body and your mind protects you on the journey. And you probably don't realize it, but on the day that I signed the documents which provided relief to me mentally and physically for the first time in 9 or 10 years, literally my body shut down. And I found myself in the bonds in Cork for 5 days. And they told me that it was literally the adrenaline had just decided, have you looked after now? And when you shut down the whole lot, I can't tell you the feeling. It's like an out-of-body experience in reality. So I was down in intensive care for a couple of days, but that was more precautionary. I have an underlying kind of health issue around heart and atrial fibrillation, but they were tracking my body during the night time, and my heart used to, without I knowing it when I was asleep, used to get up to about 170, 180 beats a minute. And I'd wake up and my clothes would be stopping. I thought, I didn't realize this was going on, but it was actually going on, but it was my subconscious was dealing with it. So long story short, I don't suffer anything like that nowadays. And it kind of drives me on because I never have the stress that I had back then, and stress that's around you, whether it's family or family related. I'm sure we've all experienced it, but that's what arose with me.
John, may I just stop you there and thank you for your honesty. Yes, you and I have spoken about that before, but I think it's such an important lesson for us to reflect on for a moment, if I may. Long journey up to that point, and everything sort of compounded. The banking crisis, there was no money available. You had this 1 acre site. You're very creative, obviously, clearly a hard worker, very talented in lots of areas, and you decided to get stuck in. The family business of 40 years would have disappeared. Decided to get stuck in and pivot, another good COVID word. Take that site and turn it into a primary care centre. And then you stuck at that and you held true to that dream for 9 years. It was 9 years, remember, it was the figure.
It was,
yeah. And nine years later, having never given up, the paperwork was signed. And 9 years and 1 day later, your body said, that's it, John, we're out of here, right?
Yeah, that was it, that was it.
And we're John, we're delighted that you're safe and well today. So just a Bula bus.
Thank you.
John, that's the coffee at 11 Bula bus. All right, John, back to you. This is exciting stuff. Continue, please.
One of the things that I've learned is you need to be extremely honest with the people that hold your destiny in their hands. The HSE and the rollout of primary care centre infrastructure is all about deliverability. Don't promise something or say something if you don't think you can deliver on it. I back myself a lot. Probably don't delegate enough, but and it's something I'll probably learn going to my grave. But I found that the more honest you are with people, the more that they believe in you. And it was that what got me over the line with all the stakeholders in the HSE, the decision makers with the bank. And I suppose then I surrounded myself with a couple of individuals with whom, a corporate accountant who's an extremely close personal friend of mine. He stood shoulder to shoulder with me opposite the bank, and as I say, I trust him with my life now. But I found that my success in modern day is the sum of the parts of a jigsaw which involve people that are better than me. There's 5 or 6 individuals. 2 of those are very close confidants. One is a retired ex-bank manager who's currently in his 6th year of dealing with myeloma and blood cancer and is above in Galway Clinic. But as a confidant and somebody that I learned from, again, it's just been unbelievable. I've learned from yourself, Colm. I've learned from Padraig, but I've also learned from my family around me. That kind of happens every day. And so that led me to the situation where I suppose I've always wanted to leave a legacy after I'm gone, whether it is to the gang there as in Owen and Niamh or those surviving me, but and I want to leave a legacy. So leaving a community healthcare facility in your hometown where people are now visiting their GP and you meet them on the street and they say, thank you for building that, I get emotional talking about it, being honest. I'm now doing that.
And again, John, forgive me, I'm going to interrupt you again because this is very rich stuff, right? And I'm going to invite the cafe audience to give you one more bull of bus because the legacy is already in place, my friend. Right? Yes. Job done. Now I know you, and I know that you believe it's not enough, right? So, and I accept that. And so you're going to go and create more and more and more. Happy days, delighted. You mentioned young when we met Owen and his doggy earlier, and you mentioned Neve, both flying it in their own careers. Neve is one of these influencers, folks, with an audience across all platforms approaching 3 million. Just 3 million, right? But you know, this is what we're talking about in terms of the Webb O'Rourke family. This is the type of focus we're talking about. This is the type of legacy that this family is building. So John, hats off to you. I'm just going to finish on one last thing and get back to you then. I love this. You said it's all about, first of all, you said you back yourself, which is very important. You also admitted you don't delegate enough. I recommend you learn to do a little more of that. You said it's all about the team and all about trust. Fully agree with that. And you said the success that I'm currently experiencing is the sum of the parts of a jigsaw which involves people that are better than me. So you're saying all the way, it's wonderful. John, back to you.
Yeah, okay, so currently, so we built the first one. I then won 2 more tender processes for care in County Tipperary. That finished 2 weeks ago. It was built in 8 months. And thankfully, the HC took it over and it's now being used as a local coronavirus treatment centre at the moment. Croom will be finished in 8 weeks. We're currently completing the purchase of sites in 5 other locations, all to start in the current year. And we're negotiating about another 5 sites, and we're in a tender process for another 40 with the HSE. So I would reckon, not only am I leaving a legacy on behalf of Zest Healthcare now in our hometown, but we're doing it in other towns, and people appreciate that. You know, I just enjoy delivering them. You know, it's a nice feeling. This morning when I woke up, there was in anticipation of talking here, Colm, I just wrote down, you have to contribute. You know, and you know, I'm probably fairly dogmatic about that. There's people behind their house doors and they say they, and there's nobody behind this day. They don't do this and they don't do that. I just believe, like yesterday Sinead spoke and I got the tail end of the interview. She's contributing. She doesn't know where she's going. But as a result of that, you know, 3 or 4 of you reached out to help her. You know, if you put yourself out there, and I'm not saying it's for everybody, but if you contribute in your own small way, those doors are opening in front of you as you go. People want to help you, but you have to contribute. You have to give back. It'll take your time. You don't get paid for it. You don't get rewarded. You probably get more criticism than anything else, and people get envious and they're probably fine. But I don't give a shit really, to be honest with you. I just, excuse my language. I just get on with it. And I think I shared with you, which I might read out if I may, that John Borman comment from a few weeks ago, Colm, about chance, taking your chances. This is very brief, folks, but I love it. The world is ruled by chance, so take your chances. Chance is a flow of energy, ride it. Take it where it goes. It is futile to oppose it. Every gambler knows when chance is with him or not, but he adds nothing and is easily shrugged off. You will understand that your grip and concentration add to the power of chance, and you are rewarded. John Borman, 80s, is a filmmaker, and we're all probably familiar with him. I'll try anything. If anything comes across, I will have a go at it. I won't dismiss it. People say it will distract you from doing something else. Yes, it may, but I'll give it a chance until such time as I feel I can either contribute or, and then I'll walk away from it, but I'll pass it to somebody else if it's something worth fulfilling. One of my colleagues there in what we now know as ESI, Emergency Services Ireland, that's just a volunteer effort as such. I was asked by Brian Riley about 4 weeks ago, did I have the mental capacity to consider something? And next thing I find myself, I suppose we're working literally 24/7 around the world. It's a network, trying to facilitate the provision of PPE to Ireland and all the countries mentioned, and indeed test kits. And we're dealing with a gentleman in Hong Kong who's dealing with supply out of China. We're hearing horror stories, absolute horror stories around the world where lives are being lost because of fraudulent trading and fast bookmaking. It's incredible. I won't dwell on it, but we have signed up to a situation, and as I say, 6 of us are giving of our time. There's a Northern Ireland advisor on Capitol Hill in Washington assisting us. There are 2 UK gentlemen and 4 Irish, and we've come extremely close, and we're giving of our time, and we do obviously try to cover our admin costs and our time, and we're working with a medical supply company then out of Dublin called the Medical Supply Company, which is 40 years old, and that's given us the credibility. And all we're doing is giving of our time to try and in some way contribute.
Fabulous, fabulous, yes indeed. Princess Shelley has started the Bula bus for that one. Thank you, Princess Shelley. John, just bear with me a second if you don't mind, because
of course, yeah.
There's a ton of stuff in there, John. Congratulations. I'm familiar with Brian Riley too, and it's really good people with really good hearts and really good networks. I was marvelling at the fact that from the heartlands of Ireland in Kilmallock in County Limerick, right, you're running this global operation, and it's all to do with your contribution ethos. It came up yesterday. You're absolutely right. Sinead O'Riordan, who was on with us yesterday, she's doing something for COVID. She's doing something because she can, and we spoke about that yesterday. If you can do something, you should do that something, whatever that something is. And Sinead O'Riordan is doing wonderful work making masks with machinists around the country. And John Webb O'Rourke has the ability to do something different and happens to have a network that extends globally and is therefore doing that. So hats off to one and all. You said we often point over, do you know what they should do? There's often this they mentality, us and them. If I were them, I would. And I heard a phrase years ago, and I think it's very powerful. They is you. They is you. If you ever find yourself saying what they should do, if I was them, I would, that's exactly when you need to step up and say, right, they is me. I got to do this thing. And John Webb O'Rourke, you're a living testament to that. John, very exciting. Tell us where you're going. You're obviously very busy through COVID, right, for a million different reasons. Tell us where you're going post-COVID, please.
Post-COVID is securing. I had a very interesting conversation with one of the senior people in the HSE last evening. They phoned me in relation from the property section. So bear in mind, the primary care centre is basically a new purpose-built building to provide the best community healthcare services out of the HSE in your community, in your town. A state-of-the-art facility for GPs, and there will probably be a pharmacy as well. I'm told by both our architects who were seconded by the HSE for the last 6 weeks and the HSE that the future of Ireland is changed forever. And the delivery of, one of the things I see happening actually is, it isn't rural Ireland, but it is the communities within Ireland will now need to be governed properly by central government and local government going forward. The people know we want it. I said this to Enda Kenny anyway, cheekily going back about 10 years ago. I said, if the politicians would step out of the way, the people would be able to run their own local communities and govern themselves properly with a little bit of a steer and resources. In Kilmallock, we're actually lucky. We've been hugely lucky. There's probably about 50 million gone into the locality through government and local government, with a new fire station, new civic offices, you name it. Choggish office closed in Limerick. We got half the staff into Kilmallock. You know, our school, secondary school is doubled in size. Our national school is doubled in size. We've become a focus of local government in County Limerick, right? When that happens, it's that, you know, and when there's a level of cooperation within your community and indeed local government and by extension central government, you know, if you take the lead, there's two things actually. Mary Harney has come into my head twice. We lost an employer about 15 years ago of about 120 jobs here in Kilmallock, and the usual delegation headed up by the parish priest up to Dublin to meet the minister, and we set up a group. And Mary Harney, I'll never forget it, because she came back 2 years later. She said, if you lead, we will follow. We did it, and we've got all of this stuff going back over the last 15 years. And by chance, my architect said to me last night, he said, you know what, John? He said, if Mary Harney's policy for the rollout of community healthcare was followed 15 years ago, we would have been well prepared for this pandemic. He said we would not have lost the lives that we're losing. 70%, as he said, are in actually state-owned facilities, residential care facilities, because of the dormitory style nature of that. You know, we need to treat our people better. We need to plan. The money is there. You know, I also have heard that, and heard on good cause, that a lot of our homeless issues are now resolved as a result of decisions taken to protect them. The government has signed up to lease a lot of housing for people on the Peter McVerry Trust and the whole lot, because the pandemic has driven them into protecting our people. We need to do that now. If we have a policy of minding our people, it will lead to a much better country to live in and a much better community. And by extension, rural Ireland will be regenerated as a result. And we won't have to rely on the Healy Rays to fight the cause for us.
I love it, Sean. Really powerful stuff. A couple of things come to mind, listen to that very rich content, because you've got such history and such experience. You know, I wrote down a couple of things. All politics is local. All politics is local, a phrase somewhere. And I actually wrote down cooperation. This cooperation we're talking about between public and private requires leadership. It needs leadership on the ground. And then you went on to say, Mary Harney said, if you guys lead, we will follow. So it all marries into the same thing. I'm delighted. I think COVID-19, and I'm feel terribly sorry for those who are struggling through it, and there are many at all different levels in society struggling through it. But I do think it's been transformational for the world, and particularly for a little country here. And the amount of stuff that has magically happened, right? You mentioned the homeless situation, magically getting looked at properly and quickly because of COVID is phenomenal. Also amazed somewhat at one level, yet not, because I believe in universal laws, that you know, you guys in Zest Healthcare have positioned yourselves, unaware that COVID was coming, but you've positioned yourselves to lead the next wave, is the way I'm reading. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, because again, one of the conversations I had last evening was the HSE were saying look, some of our sites are closed down because of this. But interestingly, and this is not to frighten anybody, but they're actually possibly gearing up for a return of the pandemic in November, which might hit with the flu. So they want to have as many community facilities ready to ensure that the best practice and infrastructure is in place. One of the things that used to and still maddens me is that, say, if somebody decides within authority to delay something for a day, and this kind of comes back to the Leaving Cert conversation that was actually on the news this morning. If you leave it till tomorrow, then tomorrow never comes and a problem arises. And where I'm coming with that is, I could ring the HSE, or I could ring anybody now. Forgive me, people ring me. I'm a disaster in a way, but that's only because I'm busy. I do get back to people. But that, you don't know what has happened because of that delay, or the domino effect down at the end of the delivery of a project. And I know lives have been lost because infrastructure hasn't been put in place. Would it have improved? People could have died, or, you know, situation could have changed elsewhere, and there may be other excuses. But while we're here, and while we contribute to something that, whether it's a healthcare facility or, again, it's something that people rely upon you for, you need to deliver that as quickly as possible and not let anybody stand in your way to do that. But if the end game is, this is a valuable contribution and needs to be in your community or needs to be available, people should be told to get out of the way in the development of that.
Yeah, John, lovely stuff, lovely words. I was scribbling notes there, and something I'd never considered before, and you put words on it, is the domino effect of any delay, and we'll never know what the domino effect of any delay is.
Yeah, it's very frustrating.
And we can never even look backwards from any effect to see, well, had we, moved 24 hours earlier, or 24 months earlier, you can never really look back and figure out what might have happened. But the reality is, I think your point is people should act and act quickly. Love the guy, can't remember his name, the guy who's part of the WHO, the Irish guy. And
Michael Ryan.
Michael Ryan, the very man. And he's dead cool as far as I'm concerned. Himself and Tony Hullen, as far as I'm concerned, doing great work. But Michael Ryan, is that right?
Yeah.
Michael Ryan said something along the lines of speed trumps perfection, or something along those lines. Bottom line is start. You can't steer a parked car. Get moving. We can figure it out as we go. And I think you've just said it in a slightly different way. Absolutely fascinating stuff, John. It's a real pleasure having you in the cafe this morning. I'm going to ask you one question, if I may, somewhat personal. And then I'm going to ask you for a tip, and then we're going to go to Q&A from the floor. Is that okay? Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
So the one question that comes to mind, because you and I were talking, is around it's around legacy and it's around family. And as I understand it, you're beginning to work out family succession and business succession planning as we speak with your family, with Owen and Neve, etc. Do you mind touching on that? That's quite an unusual thing. Most people leave that type of thing till the lawyer's reading it out beside the owner.
And I was the person that elderly couples came in to make their will, and late at night I was going out to farmhouses with my boss at the time, drinking whiskey and executing wills for people because somebody was inside in bed and they were leaving it till their death door. And it was just a case of, I think, parents could benefit their families by making decisions earlier in their life. And I'm 55 now, and my first house, within 6 months, I was paying interest rates of 22% on the mortgage in the early 80s. My father was a butcher, and he sold land that he had me moved to West Cork, bought a guest house, small hotel in a place called Drumilly, 13 miles from Bantry. It was full of workers on Whiddy Island. And within 3 months of being there, the betel gels blew up and my parents lost the business. Little did I know that we'd last gone from the butchering business going, and mum and dad protected me from all of this. I was 13 at the time. So I found myself summer holidays, 14, working through the summer and etc. And we were in survival mode again. But as I went in practicing law then, I found that, people built up assets. And then they died, and then it passed, and the people who received them then didn't have the experience to receive them, and they weren't ready for it. So what I'm trying to do from all of that experience is embrace, for now, Owen and Neve to assist me in what I'm doing, give them the room to decide whether they want to be part of that or doing their own thing, and when they are comfortable to make that decision, then no skin off my nose whether they want to stay or not. There's always an exit plan. But I think I'd rather them face up to a situation where they make a cool, calm, collective decision or individual decision under no pressure, and then decide, and that will help inform decisions their mum and I will make then in the future as to what we want to do. But I'm checking out on I've decided that when I'm 60, no matter what the situation, I'm going to put myself in a position where I can make decisions for myself as to whether I want to work full-time or not. I don't want it imposed upon me. I don't want to be reliant on the state. And I'm tracking that way. Just let's say that we won't, we'll have our mortgage paid for, won't want for a whole pile. I'm in the same house. I will be taken out of here. And as I said to you last night, at least I think I might have 6 people to go under the coffin. Little did I know I'm being cremated, but there you go.
All right. Listen, really lovely stuff, John. I think that's just an interesting way of looking at it. You're the second person in my orbit that I've heard of is doing that early on in life. Love the fact that you've got a date on it when you're 60. I'm the same, by the way. I'm a little older than you. I'm 50. So But when I'm 60, the game plan is to exactly the same. It's to be in a position to decide to keep going or not keep going.
Yeah,
whatever.
just to make decisions, Colin. It might be to go harder or whatever the case may be, but it's just to give yourself some room to make decisions. That's all.
And that's exactly it. It's about choice. It's about choice. When I was delighted, by the way, you went on to qualify what you meant by I've decided I'm checking out. I was thinking, where's this going?
Oh yeah. No, sorry. Yeah. No.
Okay, John. Before we go to Q&A from the floor, and whoever's got a question might stick your hand up and we'll bring you in. One tip, John. What would you say to your nearest and dearest? You get through COVID best, come out the far side best, in best shape by doing blah. What's blah for you, John?
Be as, and I know if my family are listening, they'll probably criticize me and say, look in the mirror. Be as generous with your time and giving it to others. Comes back to that contribution element again. I think so. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, I think be as generous as you can with your time.
Yeah, but I would suggest, John, that you already are. I was interested to hear you say that maybe the family will be asking me to look in the mirror, but I think you perhaps do that in spades. Do you not give of your time all the time?
I do, sorry. What I meant was that they'll tell me that I'm doing it and maybe I should be doing it less. That's really what I meant. It was the converse of the way maybe that I said it, you know.
All right. Point well made. Listen, lovely, an absolute pleasure having you on the Coffee at 11 show. So we're going to give you a Buddha bus before we go to Q&A.
Thank you, Colin.
My pleasure. So who would like to ask John Webb O'Rourke the first question of the day? Tim Kelly.
John, thank you very much for your honesty and for your insight. It's very, very interesting indeed. I'm sure everyone can agree. I was wondering from your perspective, one of the things that's kind of come up as a common topic, and people might have seen Banksy's painting on the Southampton Hospital the other day, this idea of our frontline staff being our superheroes and kind of the footballers and celebrities and whatever, the millionaires of our society are completely useless when something like this is going on. In Ireland, we have an awful lot of the people who need care being looked after by very low paid workers, maybe people on contract work and this kind of thing. And from my perspective, I think that's something that needs to change. People that are out there keeping our society going should be treasured, should be rewarded. They should be living a comfortable life when they're doing such an important and difficult job for us. From your side of the coin, I was wondering if you had any thoughts around that, about how maybe that might change as the situation evolves.
Sorry, I couldn't agree with you more, and actually reminded me of something along those lines. The teachers of this world, the nurses, you know, sorry, when I say community, I mean, it can be a city, it can be the flats within a city. There's an integral, people make up that first and foremost, the occupants of the flats. They have to be supported by an education network, they have to be supported by health facilities, they have to be protected. It's easily identified what we now know as probably more common occurrence as the frontline staff. Every one of those people who put their hands up and say, yeah, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a guard, I want to be a teacher, they should have immediate access to accommodation that they can afford. They should have the childcare support services in whatever manner, whether private or state. And they should be allowed to get on with what they've decided to do without having to come home in the evening knowing, can I afford this month's rent bill, this month's mortgage? The solutions are there and can be made quite quickly. The money can be borrowed if necessary at very low interest rates at the moment. And I, for one, would pay more tax if it were meant to guarantee that. And if you don't get that element of it right, then you won't get your community right, because the rest only flows from that. You know, the professionals that are there. So thank you for the question. It's very well made. I do believe that there's an awareness of it. I do believe that whatever the shake-up of the government is, it's going to be difficult. But whatever the opposition, I hope the opposition, whoever they might be, are very, very strong on delivering. And I know there's a question of, should Sinn Féin be in government? Should they be radical? Should they be? I think actually Sinn Féin can be more effective in opposition by challenging the mainstay parties going forward for the next number of years in light of this, because it's up to all of them now to deliver on what the people want. I know the people don't have the power that they used to have previously, and there's an argument to be made for reinstating one section of the Constitution that gives more power to the people. But I think the politicians across the board now realise that the people, including my son Owen, who's got quite radical views on things, and and we don't share them all the time, but I'm glad he expresses them. That the politicians won't get away and fool the people anymore.
John, that's just a wonderful answer, and Tim Kelly, fabulously perceptive question. So bula bus to both of you. That was just a lovely couple of minutes. Thank you both. And by the way, we mentioned Webb O'Rourke. John, he is your son. That's his job, to be radical, right? It's his job.
Oh, that's it.
As son. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Princess Shelley. Princess Shelley, what's been happening in the cafe?
Hey everybody, thanks John. If we'll have time to go for one more question before we wrap up today's interview, so be ready to pop your hand up if you'd like to ask a question. Before that, our guest services department, today headed up by Tim Kelly, popped in the URL link to your website, John, so anybody joining us in the cafe today can access the platform there. Mary Conway, who's joined us in the cafe this morning, says, John, it looks like you are doing amazing things with primary healthcare. Well done. So it's nice to see that.
Appreciate that, yeah. Thank you.
That's really, really nice as well. And just before I ask for the raise of hand as well, John, the wisest person I know on the planet has always been my dad. And you said two things today that he has always said. And I love it, that together we're equal to more than the sum of our parts, which you said at the very start, which I love. And then when you were talking about the domino effect, it was kind of alluding to what my father always referred to as lead, follow, or get out of the way. Allow progress. So that was always what I used to say.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for that. I have a little book here that I've been scribbling. It just goes to show, that's the beauty of the cafe, is that no matter what industry you're in, where I'm getting so much great content today. And as well, what I have been watching just before I look for the question, if anybody would like to ask one, is before we go live, ladies and gents, we have a few minutes of chat in the cafe. And you introduced us to your sister Marion, John, and she's been watching with pride. And maybe it's just I have a degree in sociology, and give everyone a wave there, Marion. So in the few minutes before we go live and Colm and John start the chat, we all have a little kind of casual few minutes, and John introduced us to Marion. And I've been watching her intently, like the sociology that I am, and she's been so proud. So thank you, Marion. You've been absolutely glued. So just before handing back to Colm to wrap up today's interview, would anybody like to, if you're not too shy, have another question for John? Donagh has raised his hand. Now, Donagh is joining us in through without video. So, Donagh, can you hear us? I think you've been unmuted.
I can indeed, and thank you for seeing me.
Hi, Donagh.
Hello, John. How are you doing? John
Good,
and myself are Zoom kids now. John joined myself and others in a Tangible Ireland event. Tangible is on the premise that we're in a cafe that's around the world, ostensibly Irish connectivity, looking into positivity in all aspects thereof, and hoping to encourage rebirth, regrowth, and all sorts of things. And it's got a 10 or 11 year history. I literally just caught the end of this morning because I overslept. I was up late after the events. But it was just something, the gentleman before in the conversation talked about something that it needles me every time I hear the actual suggestion in the conversation, because it moves this discussion of who's doing more, who's doing less, from the actual acceptance that we're all trying to do our best in all spheres of life. Yes, the members of the National Health Service in the UK, Ireland and around the world are top of that list. But we shouldn't really be talking about lists as to contributions in just about anything, because the gentleman, I'm not getting at the individual in person we've never met. I'm not trying to undermine anything that you said, but I hear it in other conversations. What about, you know, they should be raised above the footballer, they should be raised above this person and that person. First of all, I have absolutely no idea or other what the contribution another person on this globe or planet is doing with regards to improving the health and well-being of anyone else on the planet. I just have to take it for granted they are doing their best, and I'm aware of many professional, highly paid individuals who are contributing more than you and I can begin to imagine. It's taking the conversation out of being competitive and of putting it into a tier of who's doing more and who's doing less, not for 1 second detracting from the major life-sacrificing circumstances of the actual individuals on the front line of the National Health Service. One of the reasons I haven't got the video on this morning is because I'm in my pajamas. I'm recovering from a stroke about a month or 2 months now, and I was in that National Health Service and more than grateful before COVID-19 reared its ugly head, and I have the deepest respect for every member of that organisation. That's not the point I'm making. The point is, talk about us all as doing our best. Footballers are doing what they do. It's not their fault that they're getting highly paid. It's a societal belief that we should all take their money away from them. They work in an industry. They work in an industry that they get paid for based on the amount of people that they offer service to. And here's what I'll tell you about what the footballers of the world have been doing for me. They've given me a perk 20 minutes in every day when I go onto the website and I see a football match. So that's all that I wanted to add into the, maybe that's a niggly point. We're all in this together, and let's talk that.
Donald, it's lovely to hear your voice. You and I met through Tangible. I'm waiting saying you're the Donna that was in San Fran flying the flag.
I was back 4 or 5 months ago, yeah.
Welcome back. Sorry to hear you had some health challenges recently, but lovely to have you in, and thank you for that, for those comments. And it's, it's very valid. The whole idea here is to spark conversation. Regrettably, we don't have time to go back and forth on this particular issue, but really delighted that you've come in with your viewpoint, because every viewpoint matters. So Donna, thank you for that. I'm going to go back to John Webb O'Rourke, if I may, just to finish off the chat for today, because it's been an absolute pleasure, very rich with content and very rich with openness. Before I do that, I'm going to spring something, if I may. I'm going to ask Marion, would you oblige you just come in and say a quick hello, Marion? I'm going to open you. Marion.
Good morning.
Marion is John's sister, one and only sister, and we had a chat beforehand. And Marion did say she had to scoot off at 11:30, so the fact that she's still here at 11:47.
Oh, I had trouble in the school.
Well, I was hoping you'd say it's because John was so interesting, but we go with...
Yeah, I didn't want to leave, really, and today is more important than Orna telling her news for the day, so I think I'll be able to tell everyone in her class my news, that I was very proud of my brother today.
That's fabulous. And do you know,
proud of him every day.
Isn't that lovely? Well, round of applause. Shelley started that. Round of applause.
Thank you.
And one of the reasons I brought you in, Marion, is because you will now feature in that little segment on the video. So you'll be able to share that. Sorry to put you on the spot. Thank you for that.
Not at all.
John Webb O'Rourke, do you want to respond to Marion before we bring it to a close?
I could listen. She's a lady actually who again, my family and my siblings kind of amazed me, because Marion went away back there and returned to full-time employment there by choice, and I said to myself, are you stone mad, Mal, like that? But clearly not, and then became top of her class in what she did, which doesn't surprise me. She's a qualified chef, has won national awards as a young chef of the year, and is another doer, as are my other two siblings. So I suppose it shows that we got a good guidance from our mum and dad. Roll up the sleeves, work hard, and you have a contribution to make, and the universe will look after you on that journey.
Yeah, lovely, lovely, lovely. Build a bus for Mr. and Mrs. Webb O'Rourke for starting the legacy, the dynasty, the Webb O'Rourke dynasty. John Webb O'Rourke, an absolute pleasure knowing you, my friend, and in particular, thank you for coming on today and being open and honest with us all and sharing your views of the world.
No, thank you, Colm, and to everyone associated with this, and indeed those that send me messages of support. And it's good to have friends here, it's good to have family, and I suppose I'm not usually nervous, but knowing that family members and other people were joining. But I got over that, and you've made it very comfortable for me. And when I finished, it's roll up the sleeves and back to business to contribute.
Good stuff, good stuff. Well, we'll let you go in about 2 minutes, let you go back to it in about 2 minutes. But,
yeah, no problem, yeah.
And indeed, thank you for saying that, John. We've managed to create an environment here. All of us have managed to create an environment here that is relaxed. It is a cafe, albeit virtual. We're having the chat, you and I. The rest of them are earwigging, writing notes.
Yeah, that's fine.
The Q&A section is where other people come in and have the chat, and the rest of us get the earwig, so it's really great. So before I let you all go, I want to thank Princess Shelley for producing today. I want to thank our Head of Guest Services, Tim Kelly, for fulfilling that function, number one, and also number two, for having that very insightful questions, sparking that conversation. And of course, Katrina O'Brien, who will take all this, make it beautiful for us this evening. We'll share it back out for you all to pour over again, because John, you and I were in it, so it'll be interesting to watch it back. And before I let you go, let me all tell you what's happening on Monday, because we're at the weekend again. So Monday, delighted to tell you that we've got a very special guest coming in, a man I've been a fan of for some years, and his name is Tom Flavin. And Tom Flavin is the renowned executive chef at the Strand Hotel in Limerick. A tremendous contributor. John, we're back to contribution, tremendous contributor, not only a master craftsman, but also tremendous contributor, not only in the Strand, but to the industry at large and to Limerick City Inc. So Tom, looking forward to that. See, Tom is in the cafe as we speak, so looking forward to that, Tom. Once again, folks, a bula bus for our special guest today, John Webb O'Rourke. And John, I will finish by saying namaste.
Thank you, Colm, and enjoy your day, everybody. Thank you.